Hi everyone, this is our channel Around My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman. I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman, long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him."
It all happened on my last holiday. It was a terrible experience. It was the worst holiday I have ever had. Me and my friend Renee, we decided to go to New Zealand. We were saving money for a very long time to go on this trip. It was our dream to go to the land of the Lord of the Rings. We had made reservations for flight at the end of July, and from that moment on, everything went wrong. It turned out that the flight was reserved for only one person, simply because a woman at the travel agency didn't understand us very well. I managed to reserve a flight, but a different one, so we couldn't go together. But I thought that it was not a big deal. My friend flew a few hours after me. I was going first. When I arrived at the airport, I was very happy because that meant that my holiday has just started and that nothing else could happen. And I was mistaken. When the hour of my flight was coming, I queued up to the custom clearance. My passport was right, and the next thing I had to do was to go through the metal detector. When I was passing through, it started to beep. I was so scared. I was taken aside immediately, and I felt like a thief. It was terrible. The custom officer had taken me to another room and she told me to undress. I tried to explain that I had a belly ring and maybe it was the cause of the beeping, but she didn't want to listen. I had to undress. They took my clothes somewhere else, and I was standing alone in the middle of the room. I was shocked and stressed. The woman came back after about 5 minutes, which seemed to be ages for me. She gave me back my clothes, but I was not allowed to put them on. She checked me one more time with a small metal detector, which was obviously beeping in front of my belly ring. Of course, the custom officials went through all of my things, but they didn't find anything. I was late for my flight, so I had to wait for another one. My friend was supposed to meet me at the airport, and it was me who should be waiting for her. She was terrified that I was not there, but fortunately, she decided to wait. After that horrible flight, we met at the airport and we went to our hostel. It turned out that we expected something different, but it was not that bad, and we were too tired to look for something else. New Zealand is the most beautiful country I have ever seen, and we loved everything about it. The people, their customs, their food, basically everything, and the entire environment. We spent 3 weeks there. We had a really good time, but when the time ended, we had to fly back home. I was a little bit scared. This time, I decided to remove my belly ring. We came to the airport about 3 hours before the departure time. At the entrance to the airport, we saw an older woman who had a large card with the word written on it with capital letters, Poland. So I came up to her and I started to speak in Polish. She smiled and we started to chat together. When we were just about to leave, she asked me if I could take a box of chocolates with me and give it to her son in Poland. He was supposed to meet me at the airport because she would phone him. And of course I agreed. And then it started again. At the custom clearance, everything was okay. I came through the metal detector and nothing happened. My passport was alright. I was almost free when the custom officer asked me about the chocolates. I said that it was given to me by the lady at the entrance and that her son is going to take it back at the airport in Poland. The custom officer asked me to open the box. I didn't want to agree as it was not mine, but I had to. It turned out that inside there were not chocolates, but cocaine worth $20,000. I was taken to jail. I spent 2 days there and then everything had been explained. I could come back home and the lady and her son were caught and also taken to jail. I don't have to explain why this was the worst holiday ever.
Our feelings are always hard to control. We are humans after all. Sometimes we do things we can't explain, just because we feel that way. I had a student named Daniel, a sweet and innocent child. I was prepared to do anything for him, but don't judge me just yet. First, let me tell you my story. My name is Jolene. I'm a 21-year-old math teacher at a primary school. I live with my sister and my mother. My house was next to the school where I work. I love teaching, and I like teaching the students in creative ways. They loved me, and I loved them. Daniel was a special student, though. Our story began at the start of the new year. It was the first day of school. I missed all my students over the summer break. I missed them so much that I stood by the door to welcome them back. Before I started my first lesson, Mr. Smith, the student affairs officer, knocked on the class door, with Daniel hiding behind his back. Mr. Smith greeted the class and asked them to greet Daniel. But Daniel was too shy and didn't move. So I went over to him to take him by the hand, but he pulled his hand away, which embarrassed Mr. Smith. I asked him to greet his classmates, so he went and he stood in front of the class and he said, "Hello, I am Daniel." Then he went and he sat at the very back of the class. He didn't talk much with the other kids. He didn't like to interact with anyone. Daniel always looked sad, and I thought to myself, he's only 8. What could possibly have made him that way? I tried to get close to him, but he resisted all my efforts. Sometimes he looked like he was hiding some big secret, and later on, I learned what it was. One night, when I was surfing the social media, I came across a horrible news story about a jealous husband killing his wife and another man right in front of his son. The child had been none other than my new student Daniel. Reading that sad story, I started understanding why Daniel was acting that way. I decided to try brightening his life a little. Every day, I would buy a small present and put it on his desk. At first, it had no effect, but slowly he came to love that. During break time, I would sit beside him, and we would share food together. I would get him involved in class activities. On his birthday, I arranged a surprise party with his class, his grandmother, and myself. He was so happy that day. After the party, he hugged me and he told me that he loved me. I hugged him tightly. He was not just a student to me. I treated him like he was my own son. He told me that he wanted to call me mother, and that made me so happy. After his grandmother died, he came to live with me. We faced a lot of problems together, but I followed his success in life with pride. Daniel is all grown up now. He's graduating from the Faculty of Engineering. I am so proud of what he has made of himself. There are different kinds of pranks. Some are funny, some are boring, and some have serious consequences. My small innocent prank turned into a horror movie. Let me tell you why. My name is Anita, and I'm 14 years old. I live with my parents and my brother Victor. Victor is 3 years younger than me. We are also close friends. I love reading, writing stories, and most of all, playing pranks on people. I just love to do it. Victor was the cowardly sort, afraid of his own shadow, so I always played pranks on him. His terrified reactions always made me laugh. Whenever he would try to play a prank on me in retaliation, though, I would always see through it immediately. My parents used to spend Halloween at my aunt's house. So, one day, I decided to scare him by dressing up like a ghost and hiding in his closet. When he came home and called for me, I didn't reply. He entered his room and opened his closet to hang his coat, only to be confronted by me jumping out and screaming boo in his face. He leapt backwards, wide-eyed and terrified. He screamed like a girl. I was rolling on the floor, laughing. If he wasn't such a coward, I wouldn't have had any fun at home. One day, he joked, your pranks are going to be the death of me. When he turned 17, Victor received a scholarship to the state university. I saw him off with tears in my eyes, hugged him, and gave him a present marked "Don't open until you arrive at your dormitory." Shortly after he arrived, he video called. He had blue powder all over his face and looked hilarious. He said, "Very funny, ha ha ha. You have to stop these pranks, sis. We're too old for this stuff now." Oh, how I missed him. I laughed. With him gone, everything was so boring. When October came and Halloween was only a few days away, the doorbell rang, and I opened the door to find a letter lying on our doorstep. I opened it and found a picture of Victor. His face had been beaten black and blue. He looked horrible. I opened the letter and read, "Victor got involved in drug dealing and now owes us a lot of money. If you don't pay off his debt as soon as possible, we will kill him, and you too. Do not call the police, or he will only die sooner." Panicked, I called the thug's phone number, written at the end of the letter, but there was no answer. Victor was such a sweet and innocent guy. I couldn't believe he had gotten himself involved in drug dealing. I thought of calling my parents, but I decided not to, because they would definitely call the police. So I spent the next 2 days thinking. Then, the home phone rang, and I felt my heart sink to my feet. I slowly picked up the receiver. "Do you have the money?" the caller asked in a cold voice. "I need more time. I don't have that much money," I pleaded. The voice replied, "You seem to think we are joking. Okay, the next photo we send you will be that of your brother's dead body." He said that, then he hung up the phone. My stomach wrenched. I felt sick and tried to call my parents, but I couldn't reach them. The next day, I heard a knock on the door, and when I opened it, there was another note lying on the doorstep. It read, "The angel of death comes today." My parents were at my aunt's. I was alone and didn't know what to do. I closed all the windows and curtains and locked all the doors. I turned off the lights. At the stroke of midnight, I heard a noise outside my house. I peeked out a window and saw a man, all in black, in my front yard. He was walking towards the back of the house. Shortly after that, I heard the back door open. I ran and hid myself in the closet. Eventually, I heard my bedroom door open slowly. I heard footsteps walking around my room, as if the intruder were searching for me. Suddenly, my closet door opened. I panicked, pushed the masked intruder, and dashed out of my room and down the hall to the dining room. Victor's decapitated head was on the table. Oh my God. My last thought before I fainted was that if the drug dealers were going to kill me too, just as they promised. Goodbye, life, I thought. When I woke up, I saw my parents and Victor, dressed in black. They all began laughing hysterically. Angry, I snapped. "What's going on? Why are you all laughing? This isn't funny." Victor confessed between laughs. "It was just a prank, sis. And you should have seen the look on your face when I opened the closet door." From that day on, I never played pranks on anyone ever again.
How I found out that I was adopted was both odd and dramatic. Odd because I found out in a hotel room while the plumbing at home was being fixed. Dramatic because, well, Finding out the parents you've known for 14 years weren't really your parents, tears were bound to ensue. There were clue signs when I was a kid that I wasn't related to anyone I grew up with. First of all, although people told me I looked like my parents, I never really saw the resemblance. Second, prior to my first birthday, I didn't really have any pictures of me as a toddler. And third of all, though you might think this is irrelevant, but I think it plays a part. I'm an only child. Either I was just oblivious, or that I was already so part of the family that it didn't really matter. When I was in grade 2, we learned about baptism in religion class. I went to a Catholic school and religion was part of the curriculum. Our teacher began that lesson by giving us this assignment. Bring your baptismal certificate and a baptismal photo to class. The next day, I was the only kid in class who didn't bring either one. It wasn't like I didn't try. I asked my grandmother where they were because I needed them for class. I remember a brief look of panic flashed before her face. So I just shrugged it off. I don't know where they are, she said. I'll call your mom and ask her. My parents were working abroad in America at the time. I grew up with my grandparents in a tiny island in the Philippines. My grandfather passed away when I was 4, and ever since it was my strict but caring grandmother and a string of maids raising me. Summers were the month I looked forward to the most because it meant two things, my birthday and my parents visiting. I was your typical Filipino child with overseas parents. So when my grandmother got off from a long-distance call with my mother and told me that they had my baptismal certificate and photos with them in New York, I wasn't suspicious. I simply restated what she told me to my teacher, who had me look over a classmate's baptismal certificate and photos. When I was a little bit older, I had a dream. I'm the type of person who remembers her dreams. So this particular dream had stayed with me for so many years. Even now, I still remember it. I was at home in the living room, playing with my favorite dollhouse. A woman entered the picture. I remember a mass of dark curly hair and a blue dress. I didn't know her, but at the same time, she looked so familiar. She plopped down on the floor next to me and began to play with me. And then she told me that she was going to take me away. Why? Because she was my mother. I woke up then, was confused for a few minutes, but then I shrugged it off. I must have been watching too much of my grandmother's dramatic soap operas. My father returned to the Philippines to help raise me when I turned 10. I was never particularly close to him anyways. I didn't talk to him much and I avoided spending time with him. Looking back now, I realized that I gave him such a hard time when he was only trying to be a good dad. I have to admire him for never giving up. In those years, I slowly became a daddy's girl, and I still am. He's serious and strict, but has his funny moments. My mother remained in New York, but now tried her very best to visit twice a year rather than once. In 6th grade, again in religion class, we were taught that names were important. They gave us our identities. What did our names mean? How did our parents come to name us? We looked up our names in a dictionary. Mine meant woman of purity. Another definition said simple. That night, I asked my grandmother to call my mother long distance so I could ask her why she gave me my name. Why did you choose my name? I asked her, pencil poised on the page of my religion notebook, ready to take notes. Why did I choose your name? She repeated. Yeah, I replied. I looked up my name and it said woman of purity and simplicity. So why did you choose my name? She was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know. Let me call you back. We said goodbyes and we hung up. I thought that was odd, but I shrugged it off. It was no big deal. If you're still interested in how I found out I was adopted, or why did my mom choose my name, stay tuned for the second part.
Hello, I'm Sarah. Ever heard of a phobia before? Don't worry, it's not contagious or anything. It just means you're scared of something in particular. Places, people, things. I have a phobia, but I don't like to talk about it, and I definitely don't want to be seen in that state. I was in my second year at college. I had been very busy that semester because we had a lot of assignments, and it was fine. I mean, I liked studying and completing tasks, but I was never a nerd or a geek. No. I like to dress nicely too. I have my own fashion and style. It wasn't easy making friends though. There were two types of people at my school: smart nerds who couldn't care less how they dress, and complete airheads who dressed nice. I didn't fit in either one of those groups, so I basically kept to myself until one day I got assigned to do a task with a girl and a boy, Jane and Kyle. They didn't look nerdy at all, and I thought to myself, oh great, looks like I'll be doing all the work. But when we started talking about the project, they didn't just sit there or toss ridiculous retorts. All three of us were having an actual conversation about the topic. I was so thrilled. It finally seemed like I belonged somewhere. We became friends and did everything together. We could tell each other anything. Well, not everything. I had one secret from my friends. I never told them I had a phobia. Anyway, a year later, Jane moved to Germany with her parents. She was going to finish college there. So it was just Kyle and I now. All through college, we were the best of friends. We even did our graduation project together. On graduation day, Kyle and I were supposed to go out for dinner. He wouldn't tell me where, said it was a surprise. And what a surprise it was. He had picked the highest tower in the whole city to eat dinner at the very top. I don't have a problem with high places in particular. In fact, I'm sure I'll love the view if I ever make it to the top. No, I had a problem with the elevator. A phobia, to be precise. So we were standing at the base of the tower, and Kyle was happily listing all the great features and restaurants up there, but I didn't hear any of it. I was too busy fretting, frozen to the spot, desperately trying to find a way out of the situation. I couldn't say no to Kyle, who was all excited to go up the tower, so I clenched it in and tried my best to stay calm. We got in the elevator, and the doors shut. I couldn't control what came after that. I was terrified, screaming and shouting hysterically, banging on the walls, then falling to the ground. Of course, I don't actually remember any of it. Kyle told me later on. The last thing I remember was the elevator doors shutting close.